Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. There are some iconic beer bars in America, and on the Mount Rushmore is Hopleaf, the venerable Chicago institution. Michael Roper, it's a longtime publican who recently announced his retirement, is my guest today. He'll be coming up in just a moment. But first, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can find original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. Listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. This show and all of the work we do, it's supported by you. If you go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer, a few bucks goes a long way to help keep the content fresh to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising on this show or any of our shows, email info@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of that, we're brought to you by the Best of Craft Beer Awards. Attention brewers, registration is now open for the 2024 Best of Craft Beer Awards. Now in its 10th year, this is a BJCP sanctioned event judged by fellow brewers, professional judges, and industry leaders. Judged in Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America, and it's a chance to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. In addition to traditional styles, new this year is the smoothie sour style category and the collaboration competition. Learn more and register your beers through January 31st, 2024 by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. I've wanted to do this episode separate from the annual State of Beer Bars show because the occasion deserves its own dedicated time. Late last year, Michael Roper, who founded Hopleaf in Chicago in 1992, announced that he'd be retiring from the bar. He'll stay involved in various other ways, as you'll hear shortly, but the day-to-day is now the responsibility of others. His retirement came on the occasion of his 70th birthday, and we recorded this episode a week after. It's hard to overstate the importance of the Hopleaf in terms of beer bars in America. Located in the city's Andersonville neighborhood, it's been the place for a well-curated and uncompromising beer list and an equally thoughtful food menu. Roper will walk us through the history of the bar, thoughts for the future of hospitality, and along the way, he gives us a reason to strive for better bar experiences. Here's our conversation. Michael, welcome back to the show. We've had the conversations in the past about the state of beer bars in America. And I obviously want to talk about the business and where things stand in a moment, but I'd love to go back to the beginning and to sort of hear where the idea to become a publican first crossed your mind.
Well, I was, I got out of high school without a lot of plans to, what my career was going to be, what my life was going to be. And like many people, I started going to university with, sort of random majors chosen and taking classes here and there. So I didn't have a real path. My family was not involved in any aspect of the hospitality industry. So, I wasn't following in my dad's footprints. He worked as a skilled machinist in a machine shop. So I got a job working as a waiter in a tavern near Wayne State University in Detroit. And I kind of liked it. And I was offered the chance after a few months to go behind the bar. The bar that I was working at had some interesting products. It was a very successful place. It was run by some rather visionary owners. And so I learned a lot. And over the next few months or so, I started to see that maybe my life's work was not going to be something I learned in school, but was going to be in the tavern trade. Um, about a year later, I had an opportunity to work at another place. I was actually working at two bars at one time and going to college. Um, and the second place kind of stole me away from the first place, and then it kind of became a path. I had a chance a little while later to be the night manager, and started ordering product and scheduling people, and then from there, there was sort of no going back.
There's a whole bunch of things that I want to sort of look at, talk about that. But it's interesting when you were saying um, things that you weren't necessarily going to learn in school by getting into the tavern business. And obviously there, I'm sure folks could take business classes, or you can there's hospitality courses and degrees now that you can get from universities. From the education standpoint, though, because obviously when I'm talking to brewers, they're going to brewing school, or there's all of that exists. Are there classes, courses that you would recommend the next generation of potential bar owners, tavern owners should think about before they get into it?
Absolutely.
Now knowing what you know?
Absolutely. I think that I would have avoided a lot of mistakes had I had some background in, business accounting and, some basic things that, even though I'm not going to be necessarily working in a kitchen, I think that there's some culinary training that would have been helpful. I think that restaurant management courses that would have been very helpful. I will also say that the business is much more complicated now than it was in the 1970s. And there's also so much more technology involved. So, I feel kind of, sometimes a little lost when dealing with some of the technology that is now an absolute necessity in this business. So I think that, the way that I came up in the business is kind of extinct. I think that now it helps to be more expert in many fields than I was. I had to learn by doing, which meant that maybe I made some mistakes that I would hope that somebody starting out today would be able to avoid by getting a little, education. And I will say that I think that people should probably do both things. If you're going to restaurant management classes and in culinary school and all that kind of thing, I think it's really smart to, at the same time, have a job, maybe in a neighborhood bar or in a pizzeria or whatever, so that you kind of are working at it from both ways.
Yeah. Is there anything that can prepare you for the human element, for the customers?
I kind of think that is the one aspect of being a successful publican that you are born with.
Yeah.
I don't, I don't think that you can teach someone about conviviality and hospitality in the one-to-one relationships that you have with your customers, with your staff, with your vendors, all those kind of things. I think you're born with. You have that kind of personality. You have to be outgoing. Like there are not very many successful publicans who are introverts. You have to be kind of a natural. I think having the gift of gab is really important. When you're behind the bar and all kinds of people are coming in with all kinds of interest, you have to be able to talk about a lot of different things. You have to be able to spark a conversation. Maybe you're that particular night there's a bunch of people sitting in the stools who aren't really mixing well. You have to enter the fray and get them talking to each other by bringing up something that you think they might all be interested in. I think that there is, like many fields, there's a certain element to success that you're kind of born with.
I imagine you don't have the number of how many employee interviews you've done over the years.
I mean, so many that it is countless at this point.
Is there something that you look for immediately, or is there something that if somebody walks in and they demonstrate, I don't know, a certain quality, a certain act, a certain whatever, that it's going to be a potential fit versus immediately like, oh, this probably isn't going to work out?
In general, I think there's some things I look for. I will say that, in all the thousands of people that I have interviewed and hired or not hired, of course, I've made some mistakes. Somebody I read wrong, who wasn't a good fit, but more often than not, I think that the first thing that strikes me when I talk to somebody is sort of the ease they have of meeting a person they don't know, and they feel comfortable, they feel confident, they seem to have a sense of humor. The skills of making cocktails and learning about the beers and wines and spirits that we sell and all that, those things can be learned, and it helps if the person has some experience. But the first defining factor of whether someone is going to work out is sort of a judge of, like, does this person fit in with our clientele? Would they be, help to make people feel welcome? Are they friendly? Are they smart? I think, when I chat with people, I tend to like to bring up a variety of topics, and it's like, is this person like able to, to chat with all kinds of people about all kinds of things, while at the same time giving them great service. And, I might talk about their knowledge of, or, not just their knowledge of beer, wine, and spirits, but also their passion for it. Someone that just looks at this selling beer to people as if it's no different than, selling nuts and bolts at a hardware store, that's not going to work. I like people that have a genuine interest in, what we do, what we sell, and what we are. I also like to think that, in places like ours, we're part of a neighborhood, and we have this, neighborhood pub institution to care for and to cultivate. So I like that, that people have a good idea where they are, what what is this neighborhood all about? Who lives here? Why do they live here? A little bit about the history of the neighborhood over the last, many, many decades. So I think that knowing a little bit about uh, our part of the city, uh, people come into a bar and they hang out a little bit and they say, I have an appointment in at such and such a place. What's the best way to get there? And it's like, I don't want to hire somebody that says, I have no idea. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's
like that, you don't want somebody that like, oh, like I think really it's really hard to park around there. Take the 22 bus and you'll be better off.
I like that. And I want to talk about the neighborhood and I want to talk about the bar. But just on the sort of vein of people walking through your door and having the conversation with them. In addition to employee interviews, I imagine you've had countless reps or brewers walking through with their new beers. Just the explosive growth of beer over the last 30 or so years. Is there something that you wish more beer sales reps or brewers who are doing their own sales, would do before they walked into your door?
Well, it's really, really gotten crowded out there in the last 7 or 8 years, where our metropolitan area has 250 breweries now,
Yeah.
and all of them would love to have their beer at the Hopleaf. And at the same time, there are imported beers and there are, beers from Colorado and California and Oregon that also really, really want their beer at Hopleaf. So like Monday and Tuesday mornings can be pretty crowded in here with people walking in with a 6-pack and hoping that I'm going to try their beer. And so, first of all, I want them to make an appointment. Just walking in is sometimes it's like I don't really have time to see you. Or even worse is that sometimes people just drop off a 6-pack with a business card taped to the top of it, and I don't know anything about them. I don't know anything about their beer. I don't know anything about why they're in the business and all that kind of stuff. So I think making an appointment where I will actually have schedule 20 minutes or a half an hour to talk about your brewery, perhaps sample a couple of your beers, and that's the way to the better way to maybe get one of your beers on tap at the Hopleaf. So, make an appointment. And I also think that, in these days when it is so crowded out there, you need to have the right person on the street, because, a lot of times, there's 5 equally good Kolsch's being offered to me in a day.
Yeah.
And what's going to make a difference between the one that I choose and the 4 that I don't choose to put on tap? If they're all really good, it's going to be the story behind them that's going to make the difference. It's going to be the personality of the brewery owner or the salesperson that's going to make one shine over the other ones. I can't tap all 5, even though they might all be excellent beers. So, how the beer is presented to me and who presents it and the story that they tell about the brewery, about the founder, about the brewers, that's going to be what makes the difference. And, I guess sometimes if somebody approaches me about their beer and I really, really like them, it's much more likely than if somebody comes in and I kind of get the sense they're kind of a jerk. I'm probably not going to carry their beer.
Yeah.
There's other factors that have come to play in the last few years about what I take and don't take. So, some breweries that are not too far from me have chosen to, get a different kind of license. It's not just like a tap room, but, they're like a full-on brew pub in which they are selling spirits and wine and food and cider and other people's beers. They have table service. They're open late. They have lunch. And I feel like I really don't care how good your beer is. You are competing with me in every single category. So I'm probably not going to take your beer because in some ways I'm subsidizing my competition.
Yeah.
If I understand that the successful business model for a brewery now is you really have to have a tap room, but the classic tap room usually is a little sparse on food and usually does not carry cocktails and wine by the glass and all things like that. So if you are competing with me in every single category, I'm going to let you stand on your own because it seems like that's what you want to do. So, that's sometimes a bitter pill that I have to offer to somebody. I said, I like your beer, but, you're 10 blocks from me and you are actually competing for the same customer that I am competing for. And so I don't feel that it's it doesn't make sense for me to carry your beer any more than it does for me to carry the pizza of the place a couple blocks from me, even though I have a full kitchen,
Yeah. And that's, I guess, been one of the big complicating factors of the beer bars in America, which were for a long time, and I think still should be a destination for beer drinkers, for variety, for education, for the experiences. And I wonder if you can take me back just a little bit to when you were getting ready to open Hopleaf and what you wanted it to be then and where it is now, and if those two timelines still sort of score with each other.
Well, I mean, we were very small when we started. We had 60 seats. We did not sell food. We didn't have room for a kitchen. Ultimately, I always wanted to expand into the rest of the building and put a kitchen in. But in the beginning, we were very small. And there were certain things that I felt were important parts of being a successful bar that I wanted to include. But I also, because I had worked in other people's bars for almost a decade prior to that, I wanted to do some things that were a little edgy in some ways and not typical. I decided, we're not going to be a sports bar, and the only way to not be a sports bar is to not have any television sets, no screens. We wanted people to come in and drink and talk. And I always
what a novel concept. Yeah.
Yeah. And later it was, drink, eat, and talk. But I felt like too many bars, they're trying to please everybody by doing everything. And, they've got pinball machines and they've got karaoke night and there's, like 30 plasma TVs on the wall, and there's a football pool, and just too much stuff going on. And I felt like, I think that there's a place for a bar that doesn't have all that. Some people maybe want to get away from that sort of thing, and just meet with a couple of friends or meet new people and have a couple of nice beers and chat. I also felt that um, you know that I didn't want to carry the same stuff that everybody else does. At the time, in the late 80s, early 90s, most bars were they had one beer on tap, or two beers on tap, and one of them was probably Old Style from
Sure.
Heilman's. And I thought, let's do, like, there's a few good beers that because it was the sort of the dawn of the craft beer era. But I thought, we're going to carry better beers. And I had some examples. I had been to some places that were thinking of themselves as being like beer bars or microbrewery bars, things. And I thought that was the way to go. And and that's what we did. And it was a little weird at first, because people would just walk in and, like, I'll have an Old Style. And but I don't have Old Style. Well, I'll have a Bud Light. No, I don't have Bud Light either. It's like, and they're like, what kind of place is this?
What do you have? Yeah.
What do you have? And at that time, I'm gonna just recommend something that's not too weird. And maybe it's an Anchor Steam, or maybe it's a Pilsner Cal or something like that. And we were lucky. There was a cult beer in Chicago at that time, and some of it was because there were a lot of sort of expats from the Michigan diaspora in Chicago. But we actually had Bell's beer here, and I kind of figured right away that, like, there were only 3 or 4 bars in Chicago that carried like Bell's Amber Ale or Bell's Kalamazoo Stout, and people went out of their way to go to those places. And so I talked to Larry Bell, and I said, I know you guys really don't do anything like this, but what if I scanned your logo and made a Bell's neon and put it in my window? And he said, "Oh yeah, that's great. I'll throw you a keg, a free keg to help pay for it." I put that neon in the window, and it was magic. all these people, they're riding by on the Clark bus, and they'd see, oh wow, here's a bar that has Bell's. It's like, and so I kind of figured out that, like, carrying certain beers actually in and of itself drew a crowd. And I ran with that.
I'm thinking, as you're saying that, the line from A Christmas Story of the soft glow of electric sex gleaming in the window.
Yeah. I mean, it was just it definitely worked right away. And we had a few beers that were a little less special that we kind of slowly phased out. And I tried to carry a little bit better selection of bourbons and scotches, things like that. We always, even from the get-go, tried to carry something a little bit better in the wine category than most beer bars at that time, or actually most neighborhood taverns at that time. If they carried wine at all, it was always just terrible, the worst stuff. And I said, no, you have to kind of if you're going to preach quality, you need to preach it across the board. And so, I was starting out with the idea that this was going to be a place that revolved around better beer and very few gimmicks. I just couldn't get into having trivia night and all that kind of stuff. And I also, kind of felt like people just want a place that it's the same every night. You go there and it's like, oh, there's tonight there's a really loud band playing, so we're gonna leave. It's
Yeah.
like, I had a cool 1959 Seaberg jukebox, and I filled it with music from that period when the jukebox was new. And so, we had a kind of a little bit quirky kind of music, and the decor was, old, almost like old English tavern kind of decor. Um, but I think that people right away uh, saw that we were different. There's actually, there's 10 bars in the neighborhood, and most of them are playing the Bears game and had some pinball machines and carried, old style and Miller and Bud and PBR. Um, and we were the one place that was it wasn't so much what we did carry, it was almost just as much of what we weren't doing that made us appealing. And we also, we kind of, we inherited a clientele from the place that was here before. And some of those people sort of had to go in order for us to be successful, because this was one of these old man bars where, the language was really foul, and sometimes the language was racially insensitive.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And I went around and I said, I can't change the way you guys feel, but like, we're gonna things are gonna be changing around here, and we're gonna welcome all people. And if you're uncomfortable with that, then I'm sure there's another bar close by that might be a better fit. And some of them responded with a couple of expletives, and we didn't see them anymore. And a few of them said, "Oh, it's kind of refreshing, to have some new faces in here." And so some people stayed, but most of our clientele in the first year or so were new customers who maybe never even considered coming into the old place, or they were new in the neighborhood, or they made a point of coming up here because we had Bell's Amber Ale on tap.
Um, how this I'm probably going to phrase this in an indelicate way, and I don't mean to, but um, sticking to your convictions of what you wanted the bar to be, was that difficult in the face of where hospitality, bar trends, etc., sort of have migrated to over the last 20 or so years?
um at every phase of our existence, there's always been different challenges based on the direction that the hospitality industry is going. In our early days when we were a real pioneer, it was difficult because not everybody understood what we were doing. I mean, it's like the person said, "Well, what do you have? This is a weird bar. Where's the TV set? What the Cubs are playing. So we were weird in that we were not the I always called it the Irish pizza sports bar, because that's kind of what a lot of bars in Chicago in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s were. And we weren't that. But then there was sort of this little golden era that followed, in which the craft beer um, thing was really exploding, and we became very identified with it. We were ahead of the curve, but a lot of people were jumping on the bandwagon. Um, but and so we had a period where we really owned the category. Everybody wanted to, like, what are they doing that's so great? Because they're packed all the time. And we were packed all the time. And that's when we grew. So, we bought the building, we expanded into the back, we put a patio in outside, we bought the building next door, we expanded into there. And, we went from 60 seats to 300 seats. And we went from 8 draft lines to 72 draft lines today. And so then the next challenge is that, okay, we don't own the category anymore, because you can go to a bowling alley now and order nice beer. And there was a time when we're going, God, I wish there were more breweries in Chicago so we could feature some more local beer. And be careful what you ask for, because then we wind up with 250 breweries that all have tap rooms and are all vying for the same customer that we have. So we now we don't sell as much beer as we used to sell, because there's so many other places to get good beer. The audience has changed, and we don't just compete with bars, restaurants, and breweries now. People have so many entertainment options in their homes. People have kegerators, and they have draft beer in their kitchen.
I remember on a previous podcast, you were also talking about the rise of recreational marijuana as well.
Yes, that has normalized now. It's just something that people take for granted. There are, people that just stay home. People tend to stay home when they use recreational cannabis, and that's probably a good thing, that they're not driving or riding their bikes or and stuff. But a lot of people who maybe on a Wednesday night 10 years ago would have walked over to their neighborhood tavern and had a few beers and chatted with some people. Now they eat a gummy and veg out in front of Netflix. It's like, so we compete against that as well. I do think that the in general, the audience for a place like ours has shrunk a little bit. The options that people have grown such that our piece of the customer pie is smaller. I do think that, something that's definitely a trend now is that people seem to be drinking less in general, and young people, an awful lot of young people don't drink at all. There's some real changes in our potential audience. And, just as in the past, we pivot a little bit so that we remain relevant to enough people to be viable. So if more people are not drinking, or they're sometimes or always drinking like non-alcoholic beer, non-alcoholic cocktails, we're going to offer them, and we do, and they sell really well. If it doesn't make sense for us to stay open till 2 o'clock in the morning anymore, because not very many people seem to be going out late, then, we're going to, adjust our opening hours to stay viable. So yeah, we don't stay open late anymore. If, because of the work from home movement and other trends, more people seem to be coming in during the day. We're going to bump up our staff during the day to meet that need. So, there's never been a time when we weren't analyzing what was going on in the room and tweaking our concept to be relevant for that particular time. And I would say that since the pandemic, the amount of tweaking that we have to do, it has been, more frequent, and we have to really pivot more often than we ever have before. Yeah. And the history of the tavern business has always been about change. While it always seems like, oh, the neighborhood tavern's always been there, it's always the same. No, it's not the same. It's always changed. In the 1950s, taverns were threatened by TV, and the guy with the lunch pail coming home from the factory stopped coming to the tavern. He kept going home to watch the 6 o'clock news instead.
Yeah.
And so what do we do to pivot to stay viable? So some places put TVs in. A lot of rest places added food that never had food before. And they changed to meet the customer that they had at that time, and that's what we do now.
So before we started recording, you had mentioned that recently you've had some introspective thoughts about what you called setting the table for the rest of your life. And I guess in your own words, what does that mean for you and Hopleaf now?
Well, I started working in this business like 50 years ago, and I just turned 70. And I feel like I really want to step back from the everyday management of Hopleaf. I need to start thinking about the succession and what we want to do with Hopleaf. There's all kinds of things that I could do. Of course, I could sell the place. And there are interested parties. There always have been. But that may still happen at some point. But right now, I'm not really ready for that. So, we have a lot of longtime employees here. We have a bartender who's been here for 31 years. We have a lot of other people who have been here for 10 or more years. And I have thought, well, I'm going to give them a chance to take over a lot of things that I have done. I think that they know what I would do. The what would Michael do? And that's kind of it. And to make that more palatable, because a lot of people that work here don't want me to step back. They're like, "Oh no, you got to stay." It's like, well, you can't stay forever, and so as of my birthday was January 4th, and I said, "Well,
happy belated, yeah."
As of January 4th, I'm off of salary. I don't work for Hopleaf Inc. anymore. if there is a profit at the end of the year, I'm not going to take any dividends or bonuses from the revenues of Hopleaf. I am obviously my name is still on the papers, and I will renew the liquor license and things like that. But basically, what my the revenue that I'm going to live off of is going to be the building. My wife and I own the two adjoining buildings that Hopleaf is in. Hopleaf Inc. pays us rent. The rent we charge is at market value. And so that's sort of our retirement plan. And frankly, that would be our retirement plan even if we sold the business, because I'm not very interested in selling the buildings.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time fixing these 1896 era buildings. And if you've been to Hopleaf, anybody that's listening, you know that the interior of Hopleaf is sort of a museum of old breweriana that's on the walls, and
It's so wonderful. Yeah.
every single piece has a story behind how we got it and what it is. And I kind of want that to stay in place for the time being. So this is a first step. I'm going to see what happens this year. And, if the staff can, thrive as the people that make more of the decisions than that I used to make, then that's great. That's the first step, perhaps, to some sort of employee ownership or something like that. We'll see what happens. I want to travel more. If I'm in Chicago, if I'm not traveling and I feel okay on a day, I'm going to come over here and stop and have a beer. I'm going to sit at the end of the bar and with some of the older customers that have been coming here for years, and maybe I'll be that guy, that like curmudgeonly founder owner guy who sits at the end of the bar and talks about how great everything used to be. And
I hope that doesn't happen. But I like that you're thinking about that though, right? Because when you do give up control, for lack of a better word, the first time somebody does something that conflicts with what you would have done, I imagine that's got to be. It sounds like you're already thinking about that.
Well,
we're recording this on the 11th, so we're recording this a week after your birthday. Maybe it's already happened.
I have turned over the last few years. I have been turning over different things. Like, I haven't done payroll for a long time. I don't deal with the insurance issues anymore. I have an office manager that does that. And then, but kind of maybe more importantly to the customer is that I found like a really, really great beverage manager. And she has, in most ways, taken over the purchasing of beer, wine, and spirits. And she's developed a more complicated cocktail program than I would have ever done. She has brought some breweries onto our menu that I probably wouldn't have, but once I learn about these beers and try them and meet the people behind them, I'm going, yeah, listen, you hit that nail on the head. I probably would have not been drawn to them, but I'm glad that you did this. And so I've been introducing her over the last few years to important people in the business and sharing knowledge. She's, very open to anything that I suggest, but what has happened to me is that I've been very open to things that she suggests as well. And so I feel very confident that Hopleaf's beer program, if I actually think that it's in better hands now than if I stuck around, because the thing is that I've been doing it so long that I it's very hard not to get into some ruts, and there's a lot of new things happening that I don't necessarily, I'm not finding instantly appealing, whereas she's more curious about some of these things. And so I'm really happy with that. And, I have other managers in other aspects of the business that I'm pretty confident that they're going to, in general, while living up to our basic philosophy and keeping the concept what it is and what I want it to be, I think that they're prepared to move forward as you have to do. You can't get into a rut. And I think I'm not going away. I'm still, a part of it, obviously, because I own the building. I want a successful business in that building. And I don't want the business to fail. I think, though, you can't hang on forever, and there will come a time, no matter what, where I wouldn't be able to, that just it's a physical job. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and you need to let go. And who knows? I have talked. I don't have any. My wife and I don't have kids, so there's no succession plan going to our kids or anything. We do have some nieces and nephews and grandnieces and grandnephews. Maybe 10 years from now, one of them will say, I'm interested in being a part of this business. Great. uh, but I can see that right now, I'm hanging on to being the founder owner. I'm still in many ways the face of the place. I see that I will still do some events here. I do sort of beer 101 seminars with groups of people. I'll be involved in the charitable activities that Hopleaf has always been involved with. We are big supporters of our local elementary school. I'm going to keep on that. The relationship that we have with our neighbors and the city and government and the Illinois Liquor Control Commission and stuff like that. Yeah. A lot of that still falls in my hands. And that's okay. But if I want to, take that long plan, but never accomplish trip to Japan or something, I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to worry about how does that fit in with Hopleaf's schedule, and at the end of this year, we'll see how this goes. As I said, maybe it will make sense to find someone to buy the place. But I'm gonna try to hang on to it and let people who I trust run it. And I'll always be in the background. Anybody has a question about something, I'm always here, or I'm a email away.
Yeah.
Um, I think, a lot of it has to do with, my dad. Um, he was born in 1915, so the Depression really had an impact on his life. He dropped out of school right after seventh grade to go to work. He got lucky and learned a trade and worked in a machine shop. The trouble is that he decided, like, or he didn't decide. He just couldn't bring himself to retire, and he worked till he was 86. And on his, when he's in the hospital in his last days, one of the things he said is, "Whatever you do, don't do what I did." Uh, like he said, I worked too long, and there's all this stuff I would have liked to have done, and I didn't do any of it. And the last thing you want to do in your life is to be on your deathbed and have regrets. And he did, and he kind of made me promise um, to not follow in that footstep. And so I think that I'm listening to him a little bit and saying, like, I'm going to try to maintain a relationship with this business, and I'm going to try to be involved on the periphery and still be the founder owner, but I'm going to go out there and live a little and do some things. And I've already done that for the last few years. I've been taking longer trips and getting away. But even when I travel now, I find myself, um, going online and arranging private events at the bar and stuff like that. And I think that no, I need to really get away, like where I'm not thinking, maybe 2 or 3 days go by and I'm not looking at the numbers on the POS at Hopleaf. So I'm listening to my dad a little bit.
I think that's wonderful. I love that those lessons, those conversations, didn't fall on deaf ears. I think it's a lovely tribute for him as well.
Yeah, and I gotta say that my dad was a super blue collar guy, and he lived long enough. He didn't live long enough to see our second big expansion, but he lived long enough to see what we did after we bought the building and put the kitchen in and put the patio in, and he just loved it. I mean, he thought that this was just great. Like I think there was probably some times in my early life that he was like wondering, like, I don't know about my boy, I don't know if he's going to be a success. So he was absolutely thrilled that that I did this thing, and I think while this was not his trade in any way, uh, he was very impressed at what we created here at Hopleaf, and he was proud of it, and that made me very happy.
I think I can speak for all beer drinkers who have had the good fortune of crossing your threshold into that bar that we're all really grateful that you created it and that you had this space and have this space that has influenced beer and made us better drinkers and given us a space for conversation and exploration and flavor and just camaraderie. So I as a drinker who's been there not nearly enough in my life. I live just a little bit too far away, but I'm enormously grateful for Hopleaf and all of your contributions. And I hope that folks are still walking in and seeing you at the end of the bar for a long time to come when you're not out living your life.
Yeah, and I want that to be, I think that one of the reasons that, a lot of people in my staff are a little, concerned and wary of me stepping back is that, like, they'll be waiting on somebody. They'll be at a table. They'll be tending bar, and so many customers say, "Hey, is Michael here?" It's like, people, identify with me personally as well as the bar. And I think that one of the differences between Hopleaf and a lot of other bars and restaurants today is that we're not owned by a big hospitality group with 36 investors.
Yeah.
When I started working in bars, people, they went to Joe's bar to see Joe,
right.
Like
they're as advertised. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now, most places that you go to don't even have a discernible owner. They're owned by, like I said, a hospitality group or a group of investors who, and then they maybe have a working partner or a management team. And sometimes that management team stays for a while and then they all move to the next acquisition to run it. And so you have the B team running the first place. And in a place like ours that has been, a single location owner managed place, I have a role and a responsibility that's a little different than a manager of a place who's working for a hospitality group. And I do think that for a lot of customers, that's one of the things they like about the Hopleaf. And there are a few other places in town that are like that, there is a single owner, and not somebody that's trying to create an empire. We have had many opportunities over the years to open second locations or, expand, have a location at the airport, or, like people say, I've got a group of investors, they really like your brand, and we'd like to open Hopleaf in Minneapolis or in Naperville or whatever. And I always just, I said, I'm honored that you want to do this, but there can only be one Hopleaf, and I can't spread myself thin. Another location will never be the same as this. I never had any desire to franchise or open other locations and grow the brand, as they said.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the strength of the place. Unfortunately, as people grow places, I think each individual place gets thinner and less interesting.
Well, my great wish is that Hopleaf remains interesting for a very, very long time to come.
I think it will. And the world of the world of beer it's so infinitely fascinating that I can't imagine getting bored with it. I think there's always new things to present, new things to learn. And I've always had the feeling that I don't want to be known just as a beer bar. I want to be a really great pub or tavern, bar, whatever you want to call us, that just happens to have this great selection of really fantastic beer. I think you have to be a good place first. I mean, I think Hopleaf would be a really good place to go, even if we had 3 beers on tap and uh, much less curated list of spirits and wine and stuff. I think it's a great place, made extra special by the fact that we have one of the best selections of beer, wine, and spirits anywhere. I think it, like we function at many different levels. We function as a great beer destination, but we also function as a neighborhood gathering place. We function as a respite from, your work life and all these other things, a place to come and relax and chat and have a really great beer.
I'm already counting the days until I can be back within the confines of your bar. Michael, congratulations, first of all, on this new phase in life, and for everything that you've done. And thanks for being on the show this week. I appreciate it.
Sure. I hope that we can do this again. There's lots of stuff in the bigger world of beer that I have been observing and thinking about that we can talk about, that, just from my, perspective, because it's a really interesting time in the beer industry, like no other.
The next time I'm in Chicago, I will bring the mics, and we'll sit at the bar and we'll have that conversation.
Great.
Do you have a Hopleaf memory you'd like to share with me? You can, or you can also just get in touch with questions, comments, guest suggestions, or whatever else is on your mind. Email's the best way. It's John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can check out the podcast page, our merch page, which has some This Week in Rauk Beer goodness going on right now. And you can read great new content as well as the archives going back to 1979. Quick note, if you are a smoked beer lover, This Week in Rauk Beer has a robust Facebook group. Just search This Week in Rauk Beer in that little search bar there, or follow us on Instagram or X at TW Rauk Beer. All About Beer also has its own social media channels at All About Beer. It's on all the major platforms. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, email us at info@allaboutbeer.com for our ad kit, or go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer, where a few bucks goes a long way to help us out. Speaking of that, here is a quick word from this episode's sponsor, which is the Best of Craft Beer Awards. Attention brewers, registration is now open for the 2024 Best of Craft Beer Awards. Now in its 10th year, this is a BJCP sanctioned event judged by fellow brewers, professional judges, and industry leaders. Judged in Oregon, it's the third largest professional brewing competition in North America, and it's a chance to have your hard work evaluated and rewarded. In addition to traditional styles, new this year is the smoothie sour style category and the collaboration competition. Learn more and register your beers through January 31st, 2024 by visiting bestofcraftbeerawards.com/register. As always, don't forget the All About Beer podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And ProBrewer.com is your weekly spot, or your daily spot, really, but your weekly spot for original articles from the All About Beer team. Go check out ProBrewer.com. For this show, Nate Schweber does the music. Jeff Quinn designed our logo. I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.